happened in the 80s with the ground, there was a massive, I should back up just a little bit, but there was a massive upswell of Nazis in America. But they called themselves skinheads, but they weren't, because you can't be a Nazi and be a skinhead. Skinhead culture was birthed out of the unity between working class white British youth and working class Jamaican immigrant youth in England, and that's the birth of skinhead. It's blacks and white working class people. It's a working class culture of unity between blacks and whites that was co-opted later by Nazis. So we call them boneheads. But a lot of people may remember there was a huge groundswell of Nazis.
The suspect described in a manifesto how he came to embrace racism through online forums. Dean Reynolds spoke with someone who made that same descent into darkness, but came out of it.
Confederate flag.
Didn't even know that was there.
Open a certain box in Christian Picciolini's home.
It is a Nazi flag.
And the first things to pop out are painful reminders of his past, artifacts of his days as a race-baiting skinhead.
You were a skinhead for how many years?
I was a neo-Nazi skinhead from 1987 until 1995, roughly from the time I was 14 years old until I was 21.
He says he and alleged Charleston shooter Dylan Roof might once have been kindred spirits.
Would you have applauded Dylan Roof?
I would have. I would have thought that this guy had the courage to speak for the rest of us and to do something.
Picciolini grew up the son of immigrants in a blue-collar suburb of Chicago.
I was standing here smoking a joint, and the guy walked up to me and he just said, "Don't you know that that's what the communists and the Jews want you to do to keep you docile?" And I was like infatuated by this power. He had a shaved head and boots and thin suspenders on it. I'd never seen anything like it. From that moment on, I wanted to be like that guy.
He liked the message and loved the music. That's Picciolini leading his old band, Final Solution.
The music spoke of unemployment, and it spoke of black on white crime. When I was told that the white race was being attacked from all sides and that minorities were to blame for all the problems that I was having, I bought in.
Back then, recruitment was one kid at a time, but these days, the radical fringe can easily work its way into anyone's home computer.
It's much easier because there's a layer of anonymity for people, so you can say almost anything you want.
Now, watching events unfold in Charleston, Picciolini hears echoes in the sentiments of Dylan Roof.
He could have literally torn pages out of my book and posted it online. The rhetoric is the same. Not everybody becomes a Dylan Roof, but I think that there are thousands of people like him across our country that eventually could be radicalized enough to cause as much damage as he did.
These days, Christian Picciolini tries to help others leave the skinhead movement just like he did. And Scott, he's co-founded a nonprofit organization called Life After Hate.
Important insight tonight. Dean, thank you very much.
The terms slave patrol and militia were interchangeable and synonymous. Literally the same exact thing.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Currently, what the communists call their Negro Revolutionary Movement, now masquerading behind the humanitarian banners of civil rights, is contributing tremendous momentum to the communist plans to take over the United States.
You tell them white folk in Mississippi that all the scared niggas are dead. We want black power. We want black power.
Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The amendment would also give the federal government the power to enforce that principle.
I heard about Sacramento. I was like, damn, these brothers are bad. They're here up in Sacramento in the capital, packing.
Tear down this wall.
Okay, before we can really move on to the Clinton era. I should sort of explain, one of the things that Reagan is credited with most is sort of ending the Cold War. His now, historic statement of, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And, apparently a speech and Reagan stoking a lot of misinformed and paranoid and conspiracy theory driven lunacy domestically. Him just sort of exploiting that soup to maintain his base and stuff is how you end, communism in a country. I mean, really what it is from the inception of any socialist experiment, it exists amidst capitalist oppression worldwide. It's how it grows in the middle of all that, struggles with everything that it has to eke out a bit of, its own existence in the universe. And from the moment that it tries that, all the forces of capitalism singularly focus on destroying it. And that's why really, it's a long history of things that could lead to the end of, the Soviet socialist rule in Russia. But I personally, my understanding history, I would credit it much more to all of Western capitalist imperialist efforts being focused on destroying it from the moment the Bolsheviks seized power. Much more than I would credit it to a couple speeches from fucking Reagan. And I would probably put a lot more emphasis on Brezhnev and Gorbachev's role in ending the Soviets and ending socialism in Russia. But regardless of what led to the end of the Soviet Socialist Republic or Russia or whatever, it did, with the fall of that power and with the fall of the Berlin Wall, and what it did signal is there was no longer two superpowers in the world. There was one, and it was the United States. And under Bush is when it really began to sort of feel out its imperialist powers in a more defined way, I think.
And now a message from the President of the United States.
Good evening. Yesterday, after conferring with my senior national security advisors and following extensive consultations with our coalition partners, Saddam Hussein was given one last chance, set forth in very explicit terms to do what he should have done more than 6 months ago: withdraw from Kuwait without condition or further delay and comply fully with the resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council. Regrettably, the noon deadline passed without the agreement of the government of Iraq to meet demands of United Nations Security Council Resolution 660, as set forth in the specific terms spelled out by the coalition to withdraw unconditionally from Kuwait.
Today, 400,000 brave Americans await my order to annihilate Iraq. And none of us want war in that whole area out over there. But as Commander-in-Chief, I am ever cognizant of my authority to launch a full-scale orgy of death there on the desert sand. Probably won't, but then again, I might. Now, if we do go to war, I can assure you it will not be another Vietnam, because we have learned, well, the simple lesson of Vietnam: stay out of Vietnam. 'cause those guys, they'll beat you. They'll beat you bad. They're bad.
In his first welcome home speech to the men and women who served in Operation Desert Storm, President George Bush said the Allied success in the war shows that the U.S. would take a back seat to no one, and America has been revived in the hopes and dreams of everyone.
Not only help liberate Kuwait, you helped this country liberate itself from old ghosts and doubts, and when you left, it was still fashionable to question America's decency, America's courage, America's resolve, and no one in the whole world doubts us anymore. And to the veterans of every conflict, we say thank you, and let's this new spirit in our country give proper recognition to the Vietnam veterans. Their time has come.
There was no longer two superpowers in the world. There was one, and it was the United States. And under Bush is when it really began to sort of feel out its imperialist powers in a more defined way, I think, in a more modern sort of 21st century, let's go fucking wreck them with satellites and computers and all the mechanisms that we have of the modern era. You know, that's George Bush Sr. You know, his flex was the war in Kuwait, the first Desert Storm, right? And, you know, under Reagan, it was still all this covert shit, like you saw with the college Republicans, you know, doing their thing with, you know, against the Sandinistas and Contras and getting all up in that soup, and, you know, go down your own rabbit hole to find out about Iran-Contra and Oliver North and all that stuff. It's no time to get into that here. But again, that was the real pinnacle, the height of all the Cold War rhetoric coming to fruition in the United States. And yeah, of course, it culminated in that moment, but it couldn't exist after it. So, of course, that's why I said earlier, you know, it was sort of the end of Cold War era propaganda, is because you couldn't push Cold War era propaganda anymore if capitalism had defeated socialism, which was the talking point, and that Reagan was the one to have done it, right? But, you know, like I said, under all of this stuff, you have all of these, you know, in the street, on the street level, there was all the clashes going on with the Nazi boneheads, and really, it was a street level fight. You know, I'd said that they had kind of been repressed sort of by government forces. Really, the Nazi movement, all these people that you saw coming out on, you know, Geraldo Rivera and Jerry Springer.
My guests today call themselves skinheads. They say their heads are shaved for battle. Do you believe that only white people created this country?
Everything that's created around here is created by white people. You know, all the music writers and, you know, builders, great architects who are white. You know, blacks, they still live in the jungles of Africa. You know, they come over here. White people teach these people. You know, they didn't create anything over here. They just followed us. You know, we taught them.
Mike, why is violence necessary?
Violence is necessary when it's brought to us. And we've had people come at us with bats, knives, and stuff like that. Why? Because we were white.
Oprah says she and her producers believed they would be exposing ignorance and confronting hate, but they were wrong. The men came with their own agenda, and in the end, a panel of racists were given an hour-long platform to spread their message of evil.
I just heard what you said. You just said, I don't sit with monkeys. You think because she's black, because I'm black, we're monkeys? Is that?
That's a proven fact.
That's a proven fact? It's a proven fact that I'm a monkey?
Could be, but, you know,
Go ahead.
First thing I want to get off my mind is
I want to talk about this monkey stuff.
These skinheads, the ADL, okay?
No. I want to talk about the monkey business. I want to talk the monkey.
Support black.
Sit down. Sit down. I'll take a break. I'll be right back. Well, I just want to tell you what happened during the commercial break. Lord. We asked our friend Mr. Monkey Comment over here to leave, and some other people followed him. I have to agree with this woman down here who said, I have never seen such or felt such evilness and such hatred in all of my life.
You don't let anybody answer a question, and if you don't have a question like this lady over here, you tell her to shut up. What are you afraid of?
The reason why I do that is because I get sick and tired of hearing the sob stories from kikes. I get sick and tired of seeing Uncle Tom here sucking up, trying to be a white...
Go ahead, Roy, go ahead. Now, let me tell you. Hey, you gotta be kidding. You gotta be kidding. You gotta be kidding. Hey, hold it. Hold it.
The difference between that movement, when it really hit the streets and came out, it is in so many ways very, very, very much like it's almost a mirror image or the exact image of what we see right now going on with Boogaloo and all this other shit. But at that time, you know, the movement that came out now, it tried to pretend it wasn't Nazi and all this stuff. Where back in under Reagan and through the Bush era and then less into the Clinton era, but through really in that fucking 80s up to very early 90s sort of era, that whole decade was like, they were like, yeah, we're Nazis. We hate black people. We hate minorities. We hate gay people. Women need to stay in line and make white babies, and F the N-word, and F the police, and F, you know, they just unabashed. They weren't trying to pretend they weren't the thing they were like they do now. And now, really, in 2020, in early September, as I'm filming this segment, they're really not even trying to hide it anymore. But in that era, and when they came out and they were bold like that and doing drive-by shootings and killing people and just blatantly all kinds of assaults all over the country against minorities and gay people, of course there was a instant, huge societal backlash. Because it was in your face. Hi, we're Nazis. We hate all minorities. We really think Hitler's rad and awesome. And check out my rad Hitler tattoo and my swastika stuff. And I'm going to go like this a lot and whatever, right? Terrified America. You know, your average American at home. Even though they were racist in their own way and whatever. And it was quiet and it was just all about keeping your lawn straight like I was talking about, right? Like I said, there was an instant backlash to that street-level Nazi shit, right? Unlike in this rollout, this 2020 rollout, or, you know, 2016 to 2020 rollout, where it was like, oh, no, you know, no, we're not Nazi at all. No, we just want to, you know, whatever. Anything and everything to come out and say anything but, yeah, we're a total violent, thuggish mob here to protect the racist, sexist, patriarchal, capitalist, imperialist status quo. And we'll beat people who fucking do it, and now they'll shoot people all over the place and whatever. But when that all came out, not only was there that backlash from society, they freak out in horror, punks and skins, real skinheads, traditional skinheads, like, knock those fuckers into their compounds, forced them to retreat into their hovels up in the Aryan Nations compounds in, like, in Ohio and shit. You know, a lot of them went to prison. A lot of them OD'd and shit, and like killed each other and shit. But the ones that survived all of that either got out of it or became like cops and started joining the military and shit for the sole purpose of getting military training and stuff. And they were in contact with all the people that we're going to see in the Clinton era stuff, right? That we're getting to, I promise. You know, but and under Clinton, we'll see though that while I paint it as having recessed, and and they're sort of taking a step back and regrouping, they become much more militantly organized under the Clinton era stuff, or Clinton era. But this is an ongoing struggle until Western imperialist capitalism is eliminated. It's going to be a continuous cycle of the fasc rolling itself out in times of when capitalism is in crisis. And let's be clear, throughout the Carter and Reagan era and all that stuff, it was everyone that, there was booms and busts within Wall Street, and the wealthy did continue to get more wealthy, but it was really shaky, and people's are not doing well, and it's all this bluster and it's all this sheen and these happy little flashy pictures of it's great, bolstered by a lot of violence on the street and shit, but it's still all illusions, it's all bullshit, right? But each rollout of that will lose its bluster, it will lose its power, it will lose its ability to be an effective defense mechanism for Western imperialist capitalism. So it'll recess for a minute, rethink its shit, take another look. It'll not only regroup itself, but it'll take a reassessment of the contemporary conditions of the community that it wishes to manipulate and suppress, and then re-roll itself out in a different way, right? And like I had said earlier, when under the Reagan era and under Bush, the Bush Sr., it's all about how wonderful and glorious, the administration is going to be, and for freedom and for God and for religion and Jesus and evangelicalism and all this stuff. And oh my gosh, they're going to stop the radical feminists with all their obsessions with abortions and all this. But the way that these type of demagoguing figures come into power is by demonizing the power structure that they come in to replace as, the evil in the world and the thing that's trying to oppress your religious freedom and all this stuff, right? So every time there's a right-wing administration in power, it becomes, we have to protect at all costs, and it's the greatest, most glorious thing ever. And then when it's a shift to a Democrat, which call themselves leftists, which is just the fake leftist version of the fascist power structure. When that comes out, then the right goes into full anti-politics rhetoric, right? Which is that all of the mechanisms of power that they just glorified and worshipped for the last 12 years have basically become like... they've basically become now, because it's under this person with a different, instead of an R, it's got a D now, is literally the mechanisms of Satan and Zod, the Zionist occupied government and all this stuff, or and all this shit, or Zog, sorry, and so that's what we see when Clinton comes into office. It's like, oh my gosh, even though really Clinton will be, as we'll see, one of the greatest tools of defense of the racist patriarchal system we have ever seen. He gets away with it because, believe it or not, they called him the first black president. He was the first black president, which was, he put on some Ray-Bans and played fucking sax on Arsenio Hall. That's it. And so he's the black president. And he co-opted the black, whatever type of, sort of Mick resistance, we'd call it today, hashtag resistance or whatever. He was that era of it. And even though he was going to do everything from the hashtag I play sax and I'm cool, Lollapalooza, man, even though he comes from that sort of framing of the racist, fascist, imperialist status quo, it nonetheless did worked wonders to activate the paranoia and fear in the far right, who were now just emboldened to come out in the street and go, hell yeah, we're racist, Heil Hitler, and all this shit. Now they're like, no shit, dude. This guy coming in, we got to recess into the combat. We got to start training. We got to fucking, so you guys, you go get in the military. You guys, you go become cops. You get that training. Come back. Meanwhile, we're going to militia up. We're going to arm up. We're going to start building underground silos and shit. And yeah, that is the suit that gets us into the Clinton era. But first, check out this video. I'm going to be right back.
Sacramento, I was like, damn, these brothers are bad. They're here up in Sacramento in the capital, packing.